Earlier this month, we gave a little bit of credit to a Republican state lawmaker in South Carolina who showed some remorse after voting in favor of an anti-abortion bill in his state. Now, he showed remorse because it turned out that these restrictive measures are actually incredibly harmful to the health and safety of girls and women in his state. He realized that. But now it turns out that Neil Collins, the Republican lawmaker in question, has decided to double down. He has decided to vote in favor of yet another restrictive anti-abortion bill. Now, before I get to the details of what that new bill entails, I do want to just refresh your memory about the short-lived remorse this man felt. Okay, let's do a little rewind here. So Neil Collins previously had voted for a 6-week abortion ban. He voted for that last year. After the repeal of Roe v. Wade, this bill that he voted for went into effect this June, okay? So Supreme Court reverses Roe. Immediately in South Carolina, this restrictive anti-abortion bill goes into effect. The ban makes exceptions for cases of rape or incest up until the fetus is about 20 weeks old. The ban also supposedly makes exceptions to save the life of the mother. But inserting the government between a woman and her doctor can get super complicated, especially when there are certain health and safety concerns for the woman carrying the fetus. And so that's what Neil Collins found out shortly after the 6-week ban was implemented. Let's watch.
The second week that the fetal heartbeat bill became law, a doctor called me out of Anderson. I live in Easley. A 19-year-old girl appeared at the ER. She was 15 weeks pregnant. Her water broke. And the fetus was unviable. The standard of care was to advise her that they could extract or she could go home. The attorneys told the doctors that because of the fetal heartbeat bill, because that 15-week-old had a heartbeat, the doctors could not extract. So their only choices were to admit the 19-year-old until that fetal heartbeat stopped. I asked, how long does it take to stop? She said, seconds, minutes, hours, maybe days. Or discharge. They discharged that 19-year-old. The doctor told me at that point, there's a 50% chance. Well, first, she's going to pass this fetus in the toilet. She's going to have to deal with that on her own. There's a 50% chance, greater than 50% chance that she's going to lose her uterus. There's a 10% chance that she will develop sepsis and herself die. That weighs on me. I voted for that bill. These are affecting people. That whole week, I did not sleep.
That whole week, he did not sleep. And one of the things that I regret is that we had initially given Representative Neil Collins a little bit of credit for showing some humanity, some remorse, for standing up to his colleagues in the state legislature to make a point about how insanely cruel that bill is. But then he decided to turn around and vote in favor of another piece of anti-abortion legislation that's actually even more extreme. What happened, Neil? What happened? Well, let's give you the details on this new bill that he voted in favor of. South Carolina Republicans have actually been working hard on this new, more restrictive measure. This ban started off as a total abortion ban with absolutely no exceptions at all. That was voted down, okay? But since then, the ban has been revised and voted on multiple times. And here's what the final bill looks like. It has passed 67-38. Here's what the garbage bill is. The bill includes the extremely limited exception of allowing abortions for pregnancies that result from rape and incest if the pregnancy is less than 12 weeks along and if the doctor reports the rape to law enforcement. The bill also allows abortions to save a pregnant person's life, but criminalizes doctors if they perform abortions for any other reason. So the previous bill that this lawmaker voted in favor of and then later regretted was actually less restrictive than this new one. And what I love about this guy is the statement he released after deciding to vote in favor of the more restrictive anti-abortion bill in South Carolina. Here's what he said. These are excerpts from the speech he gave today. We live in a society now where we don't receive the same information. We move from one faux outrage to the next with each news cycle. We network on social media platforms instead of face-to-face, and we assign a side to every issue. Even the Supreme Court, federal law enforcement agencies, and education are now partisan. In short, we live in a state and nation of toxic tribalism. Okay, so let's pause for a second. I'm not really interested in hearing what he has to say about toxic tribalism after voting for a restrictive anti-abortion bill, okay, that is fueled by manufactured culture wars in this country. You look at the history of the anti-abortion movement, you know Jerry Falwell, that theocratic zealot, you know that he didn't say a single negative thing about the Roe v. Wade ruling until 5 years later when another fundamentalist named Paul Weyrich reached out to him and said, you know, religious leaders and religious voters in this country can accumulate a lot of power if we could just find the right wedge issue. So it took Falwell 5 years to say anything against the Supreme Court ruling in Roe v. Wade. Not because he actually gave a damn about abortions, but because he realized that he could exploit that health issue that women rely on for his own political gain, for his own political purposes. And what religious leaders in this country were actually fired up about, the reason why they wanted to accumulate political power, they wanted to do it to respond and reverse desegregation. They were furious that schools were being integrated. They were furious that Nixon did away with tax-exempt status for private schools that were still segregated. And they knew in order to reverse all this, we need to accumulate political power. We just need an issue that doesn't scare our religious voters away from us. Because if they were to be honest with religious voters, then they would have to say, listen, we don't want black kids to go to school with white kids. And believe it or not, that wasn't very appetizing to a lot of religious voters at the time. So they decided to send out flyers. They actually threw a bunch of flyers in church parking lots with all of this misinformation about abortions. And that fired up religious voters, that galvanized them. And that's how it came to be. The right wing in America, right wing leaders, they never cared about abortion. You think they care about human lives? Humans die in their states every single day over the policies they implement, insanely cruel austerity measures that they implement. I mean, they care about lives, really? We know it's BS. Let me give you the last part of his speech here. He says, I knew at the end no one would cheer a nuanced position. What's your nuanced position, bro? Tell us what your nuanced position is. You go from telling us that you're up all night because you can't sleep over how guilty you feel over voting for restrictive abortion measures, and then you turn around and you vote for even more restrictive abortion measures. Where's the nuance? Let me continue though. I fully understand the comments are about to be all negative. Yeah, that's right, because you're garbage. It's why I led off with something more important than this issue. Where we receive our information, how we communicate with each other. And can we return to being a community that knows one another, or do we just tweet insults at each other? I'm trying to do my part to the best of my ability. With that, I'm now humbly your punching bag. Oh, Neil Collins, everybody. We should all give Neil Collins a massive hug, show him some empathy, right? Because he just stripped rights away from every single female in his state. But the real victim, Neil Collins. Neil Collins, poor guy. A person in a position of power who gets to play with people's lives. He's the real victim. No, he's apparently trying to preempt any possibility of someone telling him exactly what he is. And he's garbage. That's it. End of story. All right, well, let's talk about some other domestic terrorists in this country.